You will, and I haven't even touched anything, it's just the power of my voice. Anyway, you will have less traffic. And I would hope, and there are communities, and communities are changing now where you see that they have wide bicycle lanes that don't interfere with the cars at all. And the current bicycle lane that you see on Dunlawton, which as the city manager tells me is US government approved, where when I want to make a right with my car, I cross the bicycle lane. Well, I want to tell you, you got to be a pretty brave guy to be in a bicycle in that lane. So that's what I would do. I think what's ahead for us is not so much any more engineering with Dunlawton, but figuring out how to get the cars, less cars on Dunlawton. The other thing I would again point out is public transportation. This city is very weak in public transportation, and it needs more. Not only to control traffic, but because that would mean that people who are not able to drive, either because they're teenagers or because they're senior citizens, would not have the problems in getting from one point to another. The last point that I want to raise is that I really question the dynamics of this community, which consistently mentions the traffic problems on Dunlawton and never or very rarely mentions the traffic problems on Ridgewood, US 1. There's something to be said about this community that gets upset about one crowded street and not another crowded street.
We'll touch on that a little bit later.
Right,
But
but
that's a
it
good,
is funny the
that's a
way.
good segue.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. Burnett.
Well, a lot of people think traffic is a relative thing because then they'll complain about this and then they'll go to Orlando. I was in Gainesville today because my oldest son is an incoming freshman at the University of Florida. And getting around Gainesville with 40,000 kids moving in at the same time of day was not a lot of fun. I was begging to be back on Dunlawton, as sad as that is. There are a lot of things that we can do, and a number of things have been touched on already. We have relationships with the TPO that we need to take better advantage of for funding for some of these things. We have not had a traffic planner in our community development staff for about 5 years now. And one of the things that we're looking at doing is bringing that function back as part of the next budget. When we had that traffic planner there and he had relationships with the TPO, with the DOT and the like, our communication and our asking to take care of our wants and our needs worked a lot better, and the person who did it was excellent at his job, and I hope that the person that we recruit for that, if we approve the position, it will do just as good. We've heard other things. It's not just taking traffic off of Dunlawton for better feeder roads, but the things that make people go to Dunlawton. In District 2, which I represent right now, up until a couple weeks ago, there was no grocery store. So everybody who lived in District 2 was going to Walmart, Target, Publix, all up and down, and now we have a grocery store again. Some people like it, some people don't, but that's their choice. That's a choice that we can take as a consumer. But so that has taken some traffic off Dunlawton. As we look to redevelop Ridgewood, Ridgewood has a whole lot more capacity, and the traffic counts have been going down. So if we're able to redevelop down there effectively, a lot of people will be able to stay in that area and not have to make as many trips up Dunlawton. So there are a lot of things that we have been working on, and a lot of things that we can do.
Thank you. Finish up with you, Mr. Nuttall.
Well, I'm not a big fan of government, as most of you probably understand. And the reference to our traffic planner that we have, but that we no longer have, gave us Dunlawton, gave us the problems we have right now. So again, I'm not sold on government solving much of anything for us. But in terms of Dunlawton, the answers have already been given. We're very limited. The antiquated time of day signalization that we have should have been replaced by now. I'm not sure we've brought to bear anywhere near the pressure we could be putting on our state reps and on our county reps to get that replaced with a modern signalization. The stacking lanes, you notice that Dunlawton has been torn up the last couple of months because they've been doing exactly what people realize needed there, longer turning and stacking lanes. Again, so much for planning. Why weren't they designed at their max and built to begin with? Well, guess what? We only recognized the problem after it existed. Our planners didn't foresee that. The Yorktown North, when it's finished, will bleed some traffic off, and that will be a good thing. And then finally, another east-west is gonna be critical, particularly as this town grows. And that's it for Dunlop. I'm not aware of any other solutions that we're going to have there. I won't be bicycling with Sarah, so I won't add to that congestion.
Thank you, Ted. I'm gonna come right back to you with this question, Ted. Riverwalk. You know, to the average passerby, Riverwalk is a sign out in a field on the side of the road. To the average taxpayer that looks at their tax bill, they see that's a pretty serious project, pretty serious line item. So what are your plans to move this project forward? And are they different than the plans that are currently in place?
They sure are different than the plans that are currently in place. In my judgment, there has been no bigger sellout, no bigger taxpayer screwing than what's going on down there at Riverwalk. The last 29 acres of riverfront land that'll ever exist in Port Orange is down there now, and we are going to give a developer millions to take it away from us. In today's paper, there's a picture of the new Brannan Center down at Riverfront Park in New Smyrna Beach. Riverfront Park is huge relative to whatever is gonna be up in Riverwalk Park in Port Orange. And by the way, I would challenge anybody on this dais tonight to tell us what Riverwalk Park is going to look like in Port Orange when it's built out. No one knows because the developer hasn't told us yet what all he wants to take out of it. And then to add insult to injury, let's look at what the News Journal had to say about our Riverwalk Park. When it eventually gets completed, Port Orange Riverwalk project promises to be a boon to residents as they fly around in their personal jetpacks and plan for summer vacations on Mars. That's the expectation everybody has. The real expectation, the unspoken expectation, except by me, who will always come here and tell you at least how I see it, even if that's not how it is. This developer has got more delays built in to what was approved here 2 nights ago in this very chambers than Kellogg's is cornflakes. I'm ashamed at what's going on up there at Riverwalk. The whole lot of that property should be grabbed now while it's available for future generations. We've been talking about generations down the road. Well, guess what? Port Orange will be 150,000 population 2 or 3 generations from now. And we will need every inch of that Riverwalk. I remember when the current council was seated 6 years ago, the reference to our fireworks. We should have the 4th of July down at Riverwalk. Well, here it is 6 years later. We're no closer to doing that than we ever were. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Mr. Green.
When it comes to the Riverwalk, I'll be the first to tell you, I miss the Indian that was out on the corner of Counts Westernware for many, many years. I want the Indian back. I don't care if he's sitting out there in the dirt. I'd love to see the Indian come back. As far as Riverwalk goes, I don't want to accept any more excuses. The time is now for us to put shovels in the ground and make something happen. The city has suffered through the downturn for long enough, and so now the developer's time is now to bring this thing to a head. We need to proceed with getting the proper zoning on the property and to have our developer move forward. Our current zoning plans and for the next phase have been presented, and the plan is an acceptable plan. It has a park, it has a couple of condos. I don't necessarily agree with the size of the condos, but the condos bring a tax base and an ad valorem that will substantially support the actual Riverwalk project. Can we afford to buy all of that land? Absolutely not, we cannot, okay? So we couldn't afford to buy it, we can't afford to maintain it. So, what we will have down there is we're gonna create several new restaurants and a tax base from this condo. The phase that's gonna be going from Herbert Street to Dunlawton is the phase that I'm most important and most interested in. I think the phase that's getting ready to happen now is already beyond me taking this seat. But the next phase from Herbert to Dunlawton, I think is something that is gonna be very, very critical and something that can be created as a marquee destination. The restaurant that they have out there is gonna be a beautiful restaurant. We will have a nice park down there, and we can create an atmosphere down there of old St. Augustine or whatever it may be, where you're walking, shopping, and enjoying the river. The main thing down there is gonna be parking. How are we going to develop the parking to be able to support us going down there to this facility. Thank you.
Riverwalk. I gotta be honest, you know, as a father of four, that's my little boy that's making all that racket. He's a good boy. I've got 15 years old, 9 years old, 2.5 and 4 months. I have a vested interest in seeing Riverwalk, because that is an ultimate family destination. You bring your kids and run around, you see fireworks. You just saw first fireworks this past year. It was fantastic. But I'll be honest, I don't like the plans that we have. As a matter of fact, I agree with Ted. I wish we could own it all. Now, I don't think it's financially feasible for us to do that, but it's a number. If the numbers can be demonstrated we can do that, I'd be open to that. The fact of the matter is, we do need revenue being generated out there. Currently, we're bleeding roughly $250,000 out of our general fund to support that CRA every year. That's a lot of money that can be diverted to more pressing needs. So we need some revenue coming out of there. I'm not a big fan of the condos. I think we missed the mark on that. I think we should have taken several pages out of the playbook from New Smyrna, what they did. I was just down there driving around the other day, and what they've done is just phenomenal. And I hate that we're second fiddle right now to New Smyrna. They've done a great job. I would have liked to, I've had a different mindset. I'd like to have seen some bed and breakfasts out there, some retail stores, some ice cream parlors, things that are very family friendly. You can hang out in the park and still go off to and have a little sandwich at a restaurant, a small little restaurant type place, and still bring in the revenue. Because we need revenue, we're gonna need security down there as well, because I'll tell you, it has a potential of being a dangerous area. I've been down there 3 or 4 times over the past few months, and every time I've gone there, I've seen more homeless people over there. Now, my heart breaks for those people. At the same time, that's my priority, and I want the place to be safe over there. So we certainly have a lot of work. We definitely have to work with that developer and push and make sure things happen out there. But you know, like so many people, I'm a little frustrated with how it's gone so far. But you know, it is what it is, and we're at where we're at.
Thank you, Chase.
First, I'd like to repeat the question, because this is what I answered. And what is your plan to move this project forward, and is it different than the plans currently in place? Number one, I believe very strongly that there are plans currently in place which the current council has approved, and I believe in continuity of government, and I believe as you go on, you honor the agreements made by those before you. So my plan is you honor what the current council has agreed to, and if you do not do so, if you lose respectability and no other business is going to deal with you. 2, you monitor that agreement very carefully, because there are a lot of time restrictions and safeguards. And I'm not particularly 100% for what's going on, but you monitor it, and if the developer doesn't meet the guidelines, you enforce them. I also, although I don't like it, I understand the position of the gentleman when it was developed, because the economic times were not good and there was not money, and they did what for them was the best thing they could do at the time. One thing that I would like to say, that in the future, because one of the things that I think everybody dislikes about this development is the 2 condominiums. And they were permitted because the height restrictions were changed. And I would like to, in the future on council, go back and revisit height restrictions and try to lower them, so that in future developments, this type of event cannot occur. But I want to emphasize, those decisions that were made by the current council should be honored. You cannot say that I want to go back and rebuild the house. The house is built. You're just going to have to watch the builder very carefully. And they did their very best.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Burnett.
I remember when I first heard about the great concept that Riverwalk, the first concept, several concepts ago, about what Riverwalk could do or could be. It was 1998, and my oldest son was born that year, and I just moved him off to college today. That's how long we've been talking about Riverwalk. I think it's very easy to Monday morning quarterback and say, if I was on council, knowing what I know today, I'd have never done it that way. But it's hard, because those people back then were trying to create a vision of something we'd never done before. And they, try as their best. Condominiums, that ship sailed 18 years ago. So would I like to see it the way it is? With so many iterations, I'm happier to see that he's not cramming 3 buildings in there like he was talking about a couple of years ago. Now it's down to 2. There's so many things and moving parts to this, and I really feel like that in the last couple of months, staff and council really pushed to get this thing going. And I think part of that is a couple of years ago as a council, we decided we're going to decouple from the developer, and we're not waiting on him to develop our parks anymore. Phase 1A of the Riverwalk Park for the public opened earlier this year. Phase 1B is going under construction this month and should be open in September of next year. So no matter what the developer does, and the things that we agreed to with him that we're working on right now are time bound, we're going to have our park. So we're going to have some public facilities that are very nice for the public. Now, financially, I would like to see improvements on that property because I felt saddled with all this debt when I came onto council, and the CRA expires in 20 years. And that's not a lot of time simply just to pay off the debt, because the concept was, let's get these improvements because they're going to pay for the parks and the nice things that come. Now I'm looking, it's like, hey, we need to incentivize a little bit just so we can get something and take care of our debt in the park that we're building now. So not what we thought it was going to be, but we're moving forward and we're going to have public improvements.
Thank you, Don. I'm going to stick with you on this next one, changing it up just a little bit. Let's talk about our golf course. On the heel of the city's considerable investment into the Cypress Head Golf Club in 2015, are you satisfied with the result? And how do you address a taxpayer when they ask you why we're in the golf business?
That's a great question because, well, first of all, we're in the golf business because some 20 plus years ago, a number of citizens said, hey, we want to do this and we think the city should provide this amenity. And it was a very popular idea then, and council responded and we invested in what is one of the finest golf courses. And we should be proud of that, the fact that it's a city course and it's one of the finest golf courses in all of Volusia County. Now, occasionally you need to reinvest and maintain your assets. This golf course, it isn't just simply about creating revenue and making sure it pays for itself, but that golf course back in the early 90s spurred a lot of high-end development that helped build our tax base here in the city. So we've got a lot of residual benefit, as well as it being a recharge area. We've got a lot of residual benefit because when that tax base is built, it has allowed us all as a city to maintain a balanced tax base. So we've got a lot of nice, wonderful properties out there. We've got a whole lot of nice, wonderful people who live out there, and I can attest to that from knocking a lot of doors. So the golf course goes beyond just why should we be in the golf business. The reason why we're in the golf business is because we had citizens say, hey, we want this amenity, and we figured out how to make it happen, and make it happen in a way that we got a whole lot more payback than simply just providing a golf course.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Malcolm.
The role of government is not to give people what they ask for. We've just been told, hey, some people said we want a golf course, so all of a sudden the government is right up to their knees in the golf course business. That is not the proper role of government, ladies and gentlemen. Am I happy with what's gone on out there? The answer is no, I'm not. What I would tell that inquiring citizen is we should not be in the golf business. The golf course is losing money as we speak. Right after this $1 million expansion, it is losing money. The question is, how are we going to continue to subsidize this loss of money? A year or two ago, we were in the restaurant business, i.e. the government was in the restaurant business, and we had complaints galore. We don't today. We don't have any taxpayer complaints about the restaurant because we're not in the restaurant business anymore. We lease the restaurant out to a private operator, and that is exactly what we need to do with the golf course. We need to find an operator with skin in the game and let him lease the course from us. If he pays us $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 a month, that's fine. We can cut our losses in the golf course business at this point. The only solution I'm hearing, however, is we're going to keep on subsidizing a loss. And that is a poor bet for all of those people, all those high-end homes out around the golf course. They do not want to bet the farm on government subsidies. They want to find a real viable solution. And based on my knowledge, my training, my experience, that is turn to the private sector, the engine. Because before government gets $1 in America, it has to be earned in the private sector. Now, in terms of this wonderful tax base that was referenced a moment ago, are we not staring down a 10% tax increase this year? Yes, we are. That's exactly what council tentatively approved. So all of this growth that we had, and we're still up against a 10% tax increase this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Mr. Green?
Thank you, Troy. The question was I satisfied with the results of the investment? And I will say I absolutely am. I live on that golf course, and I've watched it grow from, again, dirt to where it sits today, which is one of the most viable communities in our area. My tax bill that my wife and I both pay says on the bottom of it, golf course view. And because of that, we pay more money into the Port Orange tax base. That golf course has provided an amenity, and it has provided an income from the tax base that far outweighs what Mr. Knopfel says we are losing. Our dog parks don't make money, our baseball parks don't make money, but it is an amenity in which Port Orange residents have come to like, and this is why we move here, because we provide these amenities. That golf course has brought numerous other neighborhoods around it that have provided a tax base that far outweighs what the golf course as an amenity might not make. Okay, again, I will back to, do the dog parks make money? Does the baseball fields make money? No, they don't. But this is an amenity in which our community has been given. So when we talk about that golf course, I take a very strong personal interest into it, because if it was privatized, and let's just say it did go bankrupt, all of those property values out there would be worth nothing, and the city would lose a tremendous amount of money when we talk about, quote, privatizing or taking a shot at privatizing the city-owned golf course. So with that being said, I'll get back to my speech. So, are we in the business of golf? No, we're in the business of amenities. That's what the city does. Now again, we are city government. I understand my opponent over here, he's talking about roles of government, This is city government in the city in which we live. So it's very important to itemize out what is the role of our government, and the role of our city government is what's best for our residents. So again, the tax base around that, unbelievable. It's a desirable location. The property values out there have held their values for years. Am I past the red marker? Mm-hmm. And that's that.
We don't want to go after that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Mr. Tremont.
Am I pleased with what's going on there now? I am. As a golfer, that's the only place that I golf. Well, that's not true. I do hit Denisha Bay